afternoon, if you will. Unbeaten Steelers taking on their division rivals, the decimated Ravens at Heinz Field. Midway through the first and no score. Fourth down, Big Ben, they're going for it. Just lofts it into the end zone. Of course, it's a pick, and that's a big deal, but it's a mistake by Tyus Bowser bringing it out of the end zone because that pins them deep in their own territory, and that leads to this RG3. Pick six, Joe Hayden. So the Steelers do get a touchdown out of the sequence despite the turnover. Extra point no good at 6-0. Late second quarter. Ravens down 12-7. Third and 11. This was their best play all afternoon. RG3, tuck it and run. This one, 39 yards, his longest carry since his rookie year. And that would set up this critical sequence in the game. 12-7. Ravens had just called their final timeout of the half. They run it from the 2-yard line with Gus Edwards. He doesn't get there. Look at the Steelers, slow playing it. John Harbaugh begging for a delay of game penalty. Not going to get it. Tick, 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 tick. You see it ticking down. RG3 trying desperately to get them lined up. They could have clocked it and kicked the field goal. Instead, they go for the score. Luke Wilson can't bring it down. Baltimore comes away empty. To the fourth we go. It's still 12-7. Ravens were hanging around, but finally, Big Ben, Juju Smith-Schuster, Pittsburgh up 19-7, and you figure that is going to be your ball game. Now, terrible moment for Pittsburgh. That's Trace McSorley in a quarterback. Watch Bud Dupree, bottom of your screen. Down he goes, non-contact. Forget about what happens at the end of the play. It's not nearly as important as what happens right there. The concern is they believe it's an ACL and a season-ending injury for Dupree. We'll get more as we go. Next Raven drive. Again, down by 12. How do the Steelers let this happen? McSorley to Hollywood Brown, a 70-yard touchdown. McSorley's first career touchdown pass. It's 19-14. Just over 2 minutes left now. Steelers driving 3rd and 6. Look at Ben. The dangerous pass, but the strong hands. James Washington brings it in. Steelers eating up the clock. A few plays later, 3rd and 1. Benny Snell, you tell me, was this a first down? The officials say it was, and that's your ball game. John Harbaugh didn't like it. His team put up a fight, but the Steelers get the win. So why was their coach so unhappy?
To be bluntly honest, man, I'm really disappointed in our performance tonight. We did enough to win, but that's all. It was really junior varsity, to be quite honest with you. Not a lot happened tonight to be proud of or to be excited about.
You had some red zone failures and a number of drop passes. What do you attribute that to? Anything in particular?
Us sucking.
So that's pretty direct. And here they are, Dominique back with us, Lewis and Schefter. Nick, I'll start with you. What do you think of what Mike Tomlin just said?
Yeah, I think that a lot of coaches are not good at using the media, but Mike Tomlin is excellent at using the media to get across a message to his team and to his players. And I think that he knows it's not just nonsense platitudes that he's putting out there. He is serious. This team has not stood up and looked great against any of the teams that they should be dominating. So we've seen it a couple times now, and the Ravens are a good team. They're familiar with them, so no one expected them to blow them out. But the Ravens were decimated by injuries and then by the COVID outbreak. And they had to go to Pittsburgh. The Steelers should have crushed them, and they didn't. And Mike Tomlin knows that they can't afford to drop any of these games coming up because they need to be 16-0 to guarantee that first-round bye. And because now this year we only have one first-round bye as opposed to last season and previous seasons where there are two first-round byes. So it gets a lot easier to get to the Super Bowl if they do that because the Chiefs, I don't see them dropping any games the rest of the year.
Lewis, if you're Mike Tomlin, what in particular are you concerned with today?
Situational execution, particularly on offense in the red area. I mean, that's the thing that, every coach you talk to, that drives them nuts. When you get into scoring territory, execute because you drop passes like they were dropping passes yesterday, and you don't have the kind of ball security that you normally would have or that you expect from professionals. That drives coaches. It just drives them up a wall. And these are just concentration issues. These are just attention to detail issues. Because these guys are good. We see Deontay Johnson make some of the best catches in the NFL. We've seen Chase Claypool just rip people here as a rookie. James Washington is their guy who makes the game-sealing play at the end of the game. You just saw the highlight right there where the ball on kind of like a back shoulder throw, it just bounces off his hands. Mike is not having that because he knows in a one-off game against a quality opponent where the stakes are ratcheted up, that could cost you. And it doesn't matter how good you are during the regular season. It doesn't matter if you go undefeated. It doesn't matter if you go 15-1, 14-2, 13-3. If you play that way in the playoffs, where it's a single elimination tournament and everybody's giving you their best, he knows that could cost his football team. And then all of a sudden, we're just talking about another empty, unfulfilled season, and he doesn't want that. This is a championship caliber coach who's won Super Bowls. He knows what it takes.
So, Schefter, let's add the unfortunate injury to the insult here. And again, we're talking about an 11-0 football team, but that looked really bad for Bud Dupree. What do we know?
Well, Grinny, the moment he went down, it was a non-contact injury, basically. He reached for the knee, and whenever you see a player on a pass rush go down, grab, and reach for his knee, you know that it's not going to be good. And they believe right now that it's going to be a season-ending torn ACL for their franchise player. Now, again, they've already lost Devin Bush to a season-ending knee injury. So that would mean no Devin Bush. That would mean no Bud Dupree. And that would also mean a lot for Bud Dupree, who last offseason was, like I said, a franchise free agent, signed the franchise tag, played this season, and was scheduled to become a free agent after this season. And now, rather than hitting the market as a top pass rusher, he hits the market coming off a torn ACL. That's devastating from a personal standpoint for him.
So let's talk about the Steelers. I get it that we are holding them to a standard, and as Mike Tomlin says, the standard is the standard. But before this stretch of games that felt extraordinarily winnable, we should point out they beat the Browns 38-7. They beat Tennessee. They beat Baltimore. These are playoff caliber teams that they are beating here, Dominique Foxworth. So is there an element here of we might be putting they're 11-0 football team, and I feel like we're talking about them like they're struggling, and I'm just trying to understand why.
All right. It's an odd dynamic. So rarely do we get to the point of the season where we have an 11-0 team that none of us think is the best team in their division. And that's what it comes down to. We're judging them against the Chiefs or what we see the Chiefs as becoming in the playoffs. So it may not be fair to them. But, I mean, to be completely honest, we can go back through all the games they played. I remember a Cowboys game where they didn't look all that good. There was, I think, a Jaguars game that they barely pulled out. So just as many of those blowouts you can point out, you can point to as just as many situations where they should have crushed teams and they didn't. So it's not fair to them. You're right. They're undefeated. They make the plays that they have to, but we're not judging them. This is not a Steelers franchise is not comfortable with going undefeated or making it to the playoffs or having